Yeah, let's unpack this a bit. Have you ever been talking, like really sharing something important to you, maybe a story about your family or, I don't know, something that kind of changed how you think? And then you look over at the person you're talking to and you just know. You know they're hearing the sounds, the words maybe, but they are not actually listening. Ugh, that feeling when you just feel unheard.
Mhm.
It's the worst, right? It's this subtle but huge difference between just letting noise kind of wash over you and actually like absorbing and processing and understanding the story that's underneath it all. And that shift, moving from just kind of polite hearing to real like empathetic understanding. Well, that's what our sources are diving into today. We are doing a deep dive into material focused on sharing our stories. And our mission really is pretty straightforward. Figure out the mechanics of mastering both empathetic and critical listening. And then learning how to give feedback that actually helps people, doesn't just, shut them down. And look, this isn't just about being polite or having good manners. This deep dive is about something bigger. It's about gaining really powerful insights into how different people see the world and ultimately making your community stronger, whether that's your classroom, maybe your soccer team, or just your group of friends. If you want to connect better and really understand the world around you, this stuff is basically the blueprint.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating is how the sources jump right in, stressing that active listening. It's a full body, full mind kind of activity. It means way, way more than just letting sound waves hit your eardrums. It means intentionally engaging with the speaker and like with their whole journey.
Okay, so it's active.
Yeah.
How do we do it? Is there like a checklist?
There basically is. They lay out a pretty specific checklist for engagement, and it starts with the physical stuff, right? We're talking
Okay.
about maintaining eye contact, not like a weird staring contest, but just showing you're paying attention. And having open body language. If you're slouched over, arms crossed,
Yeah.
your brain's already kind of saying, nope, closed for business.
Okay, that's the outside stuff. Makes sense. But the internal part, that seems even trickier. What does the checklist demand from our brains? Because let's be honest, that's where most of us kind of drift off, right?
Mm.
We're thinking about what we want to say next, or maybe what's for lunch.
Exactly. And the sources say that internal checklist is absolutely crucial. First, you need to actively try and pick up on the speaker's tone and their emotions. Like, are they talking fast because they're excited? Or maybe slowly because the memory is kind of tough? You're trying to tune into the feeling behind the words, not just the dictionary definitions.
Gotcha. Feel the vibe. What else?
Second, you've got to be ready to ask clarifying questions. And these are specific kinds of questions. They're designed to show you're following the story, yeah, but also to genuinely encourage them to share more. And the sources, they're pretty strict on this. No simple yes or no questions allowed here. They don't really help.
Right. So it's about responding thoughtfully, not just politely nodding along. Okay, I get it. But it sounds like, well, kind of like a lot of work. So here's where it gets really interesting for you listening. Why should you put in all that brain power? What are the real payoffs of truly actively listening?
Well, the sources point to four major immediate benefits, and they're really compelling, especially, I think, for middle schoolers trying to build community. The first one is kind of obvious, but super powerful.
Hmm.
You build trust and respect. When someone feels genuinely heard, like really heard, the relationship just fundamentally shifts. It deepens.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And the next benefit you mentioned, gaining insights into diverse perspectives. I feel like we hear that phrase a lot, but what does it actually look like? Can you give us an example, maybe in a classroom?
Sure. Let's say you live in a big city, right? And your classmate starts sharing a story about their summer helping out on their family's small farm way out in the country. Now, if you truly listen, not just sit there thinking, wow, that sounds kind of boring, but really listen, you suddenly get this flash of insight into a completely different way of life, different routines, different things that matter, maybe different struggles.
Ah, okay, so it breaks down assumptions.
Exactly. It challenges your assumption that everyone's summer or everyone's life looks pretty much like yours. And that empathy, that ability to kind of step into someone else's shoes, even for a moment, that's the foundation for the third benefit the sources talk about, strengthening the whole community, whether it's the classroom, the team, whatever group.
Wow. So better listening literally leads to a better, stronger group and makes us question our own biases. That's
Yeah.
actually pretty huge.
It really is. The ultimate goal here, the final payoff listed, is broadening that empathy. Active listening is maybe the fastest way to really understand that the world is just so much bigger and more complex than our own little slice of it.
Okay, so we know why we should do it. How do we actually practice this stuff? Just jump in.
Well, the research suggests a specific way to practice using the sharing of short personal stories as like the training ground. You need a safe space, for sure, and you really need good modeling.
Modeling vulnerability. That sounds important. So the leader, maybe the teacher or whoever's running the group, they go first to show how it's done.
Precisely. It sets the tone. And I really like the example they give in the source material. It's short, sweet, and personal.
What is it?
The teacher model they provide is simple, but it works. My name is Reza. I love cooking with my mom. It connects me to my culture. See? It's just a little snapshot of identity shared openly. That kind of gives everyone else permission to share something meaningful too.
Okay, nice. Reza shares his story. Now, the spotlight swings to the listeners in the group. How do they respond? How do they show they really heard Reza and move beyond just like, oh, that's cool, we need that depth we talked about?
Right. And the required deeper responses in this kind of practice, they're designed to push the conversation forward right away. So instead of just saying, that's nice, which kind of stops things, you respond by showing either connection or curiosity.
Connection or curiosity. Okay, break that down.
Okay, so for connection, you might say something like, huh, that reminds me of how I connect with my family traditions when we go fishing together every Sunday. You're basically saying, I get that feeling by sharing a similar feeling of your own.
Got it. Validating their experience with yours and curiosity.
For curiosity, you ask a genuine question that digs a bit deeper, like why is cooking important to you specifically? Or what kind of things do you cook? You're showing you want to understand more.
Ah, I see the difference. The first response, that's nice, just acknowledges the fact. But the connection and curiosity responses, they engage with the meaning behind the fact. And this happens in small groups, right? Like 3 or 4 people. So everyone gets a turn to share a little something.
Exactly. Small groups are key for this practice. And within that group, the source material says listeners must use 2 core methods to show they're genuinely engaged during the sharing time. 2 specific things they have to do.
Okay, mandatory methods. Lay them on us.
The first one is paraphrasing. And this is where you can kind of think of yourself like a detective. Is actually pretty fun.
A detective? How so?
Like a super sleuth who needs to double check the facts, right? You basically repeat the core of the story back, but in your own words to make sure you understood the meaning correctly.
So not just repeating like a parrot.
Definitely not. This is about synthesis, about analysis, not just mimicry. So if Reza said, cooking connects me to my culture, you might paraphrase by saying something like, okay, so if I'm hearing you right, the actual cooking part is a way for you to spend time with your mom and also like understand your family history better. It's more than just the food itself.
Nice. You're checking your understanding of the deeper meaning.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the second mandatory method if you can't quite paraphrase?
If paraphrasing doesn't feel right, the second mandatory method is to ask a truly meaningful follow-up question. Not just any question, but one that builds on what they shared.
And the goal for both methods is the same.
Always the same. Prove you heard the meaning and maybe even the emotion in the story, not just the surface level words. This makes sure the whole sharing thing is interactive and that people are actually accountable for listening.
Okay, that makes sense. Practice makes perfect.
Yep.
But sharing personal stuff, it can feel risky. This leads us to, I guess, the rules of the road.
Yeah, this leads naturally into the rules of engagement. Because when we move from just facts into sharing personal stories, we're definitely entering a vulnerable territory. And this brings up a really important question the sources address. How do we listen critically, maybe even offer feedback eventually, while still totally respecting the speaker's vulnerability and making sure they feel safe?
Yeah, that's a tricky balance. What are the ground rules?
So the sources lay out some clear group rules. Think of them as non-negotiables for protecting that safe sharing space. And rule number 1 is the big one. Respect the speaker's vulnerability, period. You have to remember, even sharing a small story is a personal act. It takes guts, so respect is paramount.
Absolutely. Got it. Respect first. What else keeps the conversation productive?
Okay, rule number 2 is all about building things up, not tearing them down. You must build on the ideas shared. Never, ever just dismiss them out of hand. Even if you hear a perspective you totally don't agree with, your job is to find some value in the story they shared and maybe elaborate on that little piece of value. It's constructive.
Build, don't break. Okay. And the third rule?
The third rule manages the airtime. You absolutely have to balance talking and listening. Everyone should get a roughly equal chance to speak and to listen. No one person should dominate the whole conversation. It's supposed to be a group dialogue, right? Not a
Awesome.
monologue competition.
Right. Share the space. Okay, so those are the rules, kind of like the protective walls around the conversation. Now let's talk about the tools we use inside those walls. This feels like leveling up the practical language you can actually use to go deeper than just saying, yeah, I liked your story. The sources give us some really specific phrases, like a toolkit.
Exactly. An advanced feedback toolkit. That's a great way to put it. These are essentially starter phrases designed to shift the conversation from just surface appreciation to maybe some real personal insight. They're super valuable for showing just how deeply you are listening.
Okay, let's break them down. The first couple seem focused on noticing things and making connections.
Yeah, the first one is great. I noticed your story highlights. This lets you point out a specific theme or insight you picked up on. Maybe it's something the speaker didn't even realize they were emphasizing so much. For instance, with Reza's story, you might say, I noticed your story really highlights how much family connection means to you, even though you were talking about cooking.
Ooh, that's good. Shows you were analyzing, not just hearing. And the second phrase, about connection.
The second one is a really powerful way to validate the speaker by linking their story to your own life. That connects to my experience of, yeah. So you might say, that connects to my experience of learning guitar with my grandpa. It felt like more than just music. It shows their story hit home for you. It resonated.
Okay, observing and connecting. What about the next tools? They seem to push even deeper, maybe into emotions.
For sure. The next two are designed for that deeper emotional and intellectual connection. You can use the phrase, I wonder what you felt when. This shifts the focus directly onto the emotion, away from just the plot points. You're trying to step into their emotional shoes. So if Reza maybe shared another story about a recipe totally failing, you wouldn't just say, oh, bummer. You'd say, I wonder what you felt when that recipe didn't turn out right, especially after putting in all that effort.
Wow, yeah. That immediately makes it about the shared human experience, not just the failed cake or whatever.
Right.
Okay, and the last phrase in this toolkit, you said it's kind of the ultimate feedback.
Yeah, this one's my favorite too, actually. It's what we could call the perspective shifter. The phrase is, your story helped me see whatever the topic is differently. Think about that. It means your listening wasn't just passive reception. It was so active, so engaged, that it actually changed your thinking about something.
That's powerful.
It really is. If you heard a story, maybe about someone's immigration journey, and it genuinely made you rethink your views on community or belonging, telling the speaker, your story helped me see community differently. That is probably the highest compliment you can give. It really validates the power of their sharing.
Okay, so we've shared stories, we've listened using paraphrasing and questions, we've given thoughtful feedback using these starter phrases. What happens next? Do we just walk away?
Nope. The sources are clear that the learning isn't quite done yet. There's a crucial reflection phase needed to really lock in the insights. You don't just let it float away, you got to process it.
Ah, like homework, but hopefully more meaningful.
Kind of. The sources actually mandate a specific short writing task. It's required for really internalizing what you heard and experienced. You need to write down two specific things.
Okay, what are they?
The first thing you write down is, one perspective I gained today is, this forces you to pinpoint and acknowledge that your worldview actually expanded because of something specific you heard from a peer. It makes it concrete.
So you have to name the new viewpoint. Got it. And the second thing?
The second is comparative. It forces you to synthesize what you heard and hold it up against your own experience. You write, one similarity or difference I noticed between my story and my peers is, oh, this little assignment does something cool. It makes the stories you hear act like mirrors, reflecting back on your own identity, helping you define yourself a bit more clearly in relation to the people around you.
Okay, wow. So let's zoom out. Why did we do all this? Share these little bits of our lives, listen so intensely, use these specific phrases, reflect on it. What's the big picture here? We've covered the how-to, the practice, the reflection. What's the ultimate point?
Well, the research connects this whole practice back to a really interesting goal, using active listening essentially as the research phase for doing some powerful writing later on. The ultimate aim, according to these sources, is to take these initial shared stories and the new perspectives you gain from really listening, and then expand and polish them into more formal, written narratives, maybe essays, maybe stories.
Ah, so it's about exploring identity.
Exactly. Exploring identity, culture, perspective, all that good stuff, but in a deeper, more structured, written way. The listening and sharing fuel the writing.
That's actually brilliant. We're using communication skills not just to communicate better, but to fuel self-discovery and improve our writing. That's a cool connection. And there's one last optional step mentioned, something about sharing with the whole class.
Yeah, as a kind of beautiful final step, the sources suggest an optional whole class sharing session. This isn't about retelling stories, though. It's where a few volunteers might share a powerful insight they gained from listening to someone else's story. Or maybe they talk about how actively listening actually changed how they saw a particular classmate.
Oh, that's neat. So the focus is on the impact of listening.
Right. And the sources say it's usually met with respectful applause, maybe one reflective comment from the class, and it just beautifully closes the loop on that empathetic connection and community building. The focus shifts from the individual story to the impact on the whole group.
Okay, what a journey. We've really covered a lot in this deep dive today. We learned the nitty-gritty mechanics of active listening, the open body language, picking up tone, asking those clarifying questions, and we got that clear structure for giving feedback that's both empathetic and advanced, using those really useful phrases like, I wonder what you felt when, or that big one, your story helped me see things differently.
Yeah, and if we just pull back one last time to see the bigger picture, what the sources really show us is that the true reward here, the ultimate prize from sharing our stories and really listening to others, it's not just becoming a better communicator, though that's great. It's actually actively discovering more about your own identity, but seeing it through the lens of other people's experiences. We kind of use the stories we hear to better understand the stories we carry inside ourselves.
That's a really profound thought. Okay, so we focus a lot today on how much you gain by listening carefully to someone else's story using these techniques. Now, here's something to chew on as you go through your day, maybe into your next conversation. When we listen really actively, truly deeply, do we end up learning more about the person who's speaking? Or actually, do we learn more about ourselves and maybe our own place in the world? What story will you share next now that you know how to truly listen?